Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. The medicine cart's wheels stopped squeaking at 3:47 a.m. I know because I was staring at my watch, pressed against the door of room 218, trying not to breathe. The nurse, or whatever still pushed that cart through the second floor, had paused right outside. I could smell the antiseptic and something else. Something sweet and rotten like fruit left too long in the sun. 3 months ago, I would have laughed at anyone who told me I'd be hiding from ghost nurses in America's most haunted hotel. But 3 months ago, I still had my teaching job at Eureka Springs High School. Still had my wife Bethany. Still believed the world made sense. My name's Tom Whitfield, and I've lived in Carroll County my whole life. My granddad helped build the Christ of the Ozarks statue back in '66. My dad ran the hardware store on Spring Street until Walmart drove him under. This town's in my blood, same as the limestone in these hills. After Bethany left, said she couldn't watch me drink myself to death after losing my job, I spent 2 months living in my truck, parking behind the old Dairy Queen on 62. Pride's a funny thing. I had friends who would have helped, but I couldn't face them. Not after getting fired for showing up drunk to parent-teacher conferences. It was Dwayne Jessup who found me one morning, tapping on my truck window with his flashlight. Dwayne and I went to school together, back when Eureka Springs still had more locals than tourists. "Tom, what the hell you doing out here?" I told him I was between places. He didn't push it. "Listen," he said, shifting his security guard uniform. "The Crescent's looking for a night janitor. Pays decent and..." He glanced around like someone might be listening. "They're having trouble keeping people. Been through 3 since September." "Why's that?" Dwayne rubbed his neck. "It's the Crescent, man. You know how it is. But the manager, Mr. Kellerman, he's all right. Long as you follow the protocols, you'll be fine." Protocols, that's what they called them. Not rules, not guidelines, protocols. Like we were handling hazardous materials instead of mopping 100-year-old floors, or Dr. Norman Baker used to drill holes in cancer patients' skulls. I started the next Monday. Mr. Kellerman, a thin man with nervous hands, walked me through the basics. When he handed me the laminated card with the protocols, his fingers shook. "These are non-negotiable," he said. "I don't care if you believe in this stuff or not. You follow them exactly, or you're gone. Understood?" I understood I needed the money. I understood my truck's heater was broken and November was coming. What I didn't understand was why his eyes kept darting to the staircase leading to the second floor, or why he insisted on finishing our tour before sunset. But I learned. God help me, I learned. My first shift started at 11 p.m. on a Monday. The Crescent sat on West Mountain like it always had, that limestone fortress overlooking the valley. Tourist season was winding down, which meant fewer guests to work around. Mr. Kellerman met me at the employee entrance, a steel door hidden behind the dumpsters. "You memorize those protocols?" he asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I patted my shirt pocket where I'd tucked the laminated card. "Yes, sir." "Show me." I pulled out the card, though I knew them by heart. 8 protocols, typed in neat rows. Crescent Hotel night. Custodial protocols. Second floor medicine cart. When you hear the cart, stand beside the nearest guest room door. Remain still until the sound passes. Room 419. Never enter after 2 a.m. If the door is open, close it from the hallway without looking inside. Basement storage. Count the morgue tables before entering. If there are more than 4, leave immediately. and return after 3:33 a.m. The governor's suite. If you smell pipe tobacco in the hallway, knock 3 times on the door and say, "Just checking, Governor." Wait for the smell to fade before continuing. Guest reports. If a guest mentions seeing a nurse, doctor, or patient, respond only with, "The hotel appreciates your feedback." Do not engage further. Cleaning supplies. Never use modern chemicals on the second floor. Traditional soap and water only. The closet has what you need. The morgue elevator. If it operates between 2 and 4 a.m., do not investigate. Do not use stairs during this time. Morning routine. Complete all tasks before 5:30 a.m. Be off the property by 6 a.m. without exception. Kellerman nodded, satisfied. Dwayne will be here if you need anything. He's got the security office on the first floor. He handed me a heavy key ring. These open everything except the guest rooms. Questions? What happens if I break a protocol? His jaw tightened. We've lost 3 janitors in 2 months. 1 quit after his first night. 1 disappeared during his shift. Found his car still in the lot, keys in the ignition. The 3rd, he trailed off. Just followed the protocols. He left me at the service entrance. I wheeled my cart inside, the smell of old wood and furniture polish filling my nose. The Crescent had been restored beautifully, all Victorian elegance and modern amenities, but underneath you could feel its age, feel its history. I started on the 4th floor, working my way down. The protocols said nothing about the upper floors, and the work was straightforward. Vacuum the hallways, empty trash bins, wipe down the elevator buttons. Normal hotel maintenance. Around 1 a.m., I reached the 3rd floor. A couple emerged from their room, dressed for the ghost tour. "Excuse me?" the woman said, clutching her husband's arm. "We're looking for the ghost tour guide?" "Should be in the lobby, ma'am." She glanced back at their room. "We saw something earlier. A nurse standing at the foot of our bed. She looked so real, but when I blinked..." "The hotel appreciates your feedback," I said, the words tasting strange in my mouth. Her face fell. "But the hotel appreciates your feedback." Her husband pulled her toward the elevator, shooting me a look. I turned back to my cart, hands shaking as I gripped the mop handle. Protocol 5. I'd followed it exactly, but it felt wrong, dismissing her like that. At 1:45, I reached the 2nd floor. The hallway stretched longer than the others, doors spaced oddly far apart. A brass plank by the elevator read, "Dr. Baker's hospital floor, 1937 to 1939. Someone had tried to polish away the tarnish, but the letters still looked dark. The floor had a different smell, not just old, but medical. Like bandages and iodine had soaked into the walls. I found the supply closet Kellerman mentioned, stocked with bars of lye soap and rough cloths. No bleach, no modern cleaners. I didn't question it. I was mopping near room 218 when I heard it. The medicine cart. My watch read 2:17 a.m. The sound came from the far end of the hall, that rhythmic wheeling getting louder. I dropped my mop and moved to the nearest door, room 211, pressed my back against it, standing like I was waiting for someone to answer. The squeaking grew closer. I could hear other sounds now, glass vials clinking, liquid sloshing in bottles. A woman's voice humming something low and tuneless. She passed right by me. I kept my eyes fixed straight ahead, but in my peripheral vision, I caught movement. White fabric, the smell of carbolic acid, and that same sweet rot from my first encounter. The cart stopped. The humming stopped. I felt her watching me, though I didn't dare turn my head. My legs shook. Sweat ran down my back despite the hall's chill. Then, so close I felt breath on my ear. "You're not in a room." The squeaking resumed, fading down the hall. I stayed frozen against that door until my watch showed 2:30, then collapsed against the wall, gasping. Protocol 1 had saved me, but I had 6 more hours until dawn. I abandoned the second floor after the medicine cart incident. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, and I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who might tell me I wasn't losing my mind. The security office sat tucked behind the registration desk, barely larger than a closet. Dwayne had his feet up, watching grainy footage from the lobby cameras. Rough night? He didn't look away from the monitors. The medicine cart, I heard it. That got his attention. He swiveled his chair to face me. "You followed protocol?" "Yeah, but Jesus Christ, Dwayne." She spoke to me. Said I wasn't in a room. He studied my face for a long moment. "You want some coffee?" "I want some answers." Dwayne poured from a thermos that had seen better days. The coffee tasted burnt, but I drank it anyway. "The Crescent's been here since 1886, he began. Grand Hotel, health spa, all that. But in 1937, this quack named Norman Baker bought it. Turned it into a cancer hospital. Told desperate people he could cure them with spring water and radio waves. I know the history. You know the tourist version. Truth is, Baker was drilling into skulls, injecting patients with everything from watermelon seed extract to carbolic acid. Had a whole staff of nurses who either believed his BS or needed the work too bad to care. Head nurse was a woman named Eleanor Vance. "The medicine cart?" He nodded. "Every night, 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. she makes her rounds, checking on patients who checked out permanently decades ago. Long as she thinks you're supposed to be there, visitor, staff, whatever, she moves on. What happens if she doesn't?" Dwayne's expression darkened. "Remember that janitor who disappeared? Carlos Mendoza. Good kid, worked hard. Second night on the job, he tried to run when he heard the cart. She found him hiding in the stairwell. He paused. Cops found him 3 days later in room 218. Door was locked from the inside. No signs of violence, just empty. Like something had drained everything out of him. Coroner called it sudden cardiac arrest, but I saw the body. 23 years old, healthy as a horse, and his hair had gone white. The coffee turned sour in my stomach. Why doesn't Kellerman warn people properly? Because nobody would take the job. The Crescent needs the tourist money, and tourists want their haunted hotel experience. But they also want clean rooms and working toilets. So we follow the protocols, keep our heads down, and cash our paychecks. He glanced at his watch. "It's 3:15. You planning to finish the second floor tonight?" "Do I have to?" Kellerman checks the work logs. Skip too many areas, he'll notice. But... Dwayne opened a desk drawer, pulled out a flask. "Liquid courage?" I shook my head. 6 months sober, even if it was killing me. I'll manage. Back on the second floor, the hallway felt different. Colder. The overhead lights, original fixtures from the 1930s, cast pools of yellow that didn't quite connect, leaving strips of darkness between each room. I worked quickly, mopping without my usual attention to detail. At the far end of the hall, I noticed room 419, the presidential suite, according to the brass nameplate. The door stood slightly open. My watch showed 1:58 a.m. Protocol 2 was clear. Never enter after 2 a.m. I had 2 minutes. I approached carefully. Through the crack, I could see period furniture, heavy curtains drawn shut. The room smelled different from the hallway. Not medical, but earthy. like freshly turned soil. As I reached for the door handle to pull it closed, something moved inside. A shadow, passing between me and whatever dim light source existed in there. My hand froze inches from the brass. 2 a.m. I jerked back, grabbed the handle from the outside, and pulled. The door resisted, as if someone on the other side was holding it. I pulled harder, and it suddenly gave way, slamming shut with a bang that echoed down the empty hallway. Immediately, something slammed against the door from inside. The wood buckled outward, brass hinges groaning. Another impact, harder this time. Paint chips fell from the door frame. I backed away, mop clattering to the floor. The pounding continued, rhythmic, violent, like someone using their whole body as a battering ram. Then abruptly, silence. A new sound emerged. Scratching. Fingernails on wood, starting at the top of the door and slowly dragging downward. The sound made my teeth ache. I grabbed my cart and practically ran to the service elevator, abandoning the rest of the second floor. The scratching followed me, seeming to come from inside the walls themselves. In the elevator, I caught my breath and checked the protocols again. Nothing about scratching sounds. Nothing about what to do when a room tried to keep itself open. The basement was my next stop. Protocol 3 seemed straightforward enough. Count the morgue tables. How bad could it be? The elevator opened to a narrow corridor lit by bare bulbs. The basement hadn't been renovated like the upper floors. Original stone walls wept moisture, and the air tasted of minerals and decay. The morgue was exactly where you'd expect. At the far end, behind a door marked storage. I stood outside, steadying myself. Through the small window, I could see white shapes, tables. I started counting. 1 by the left wall, 2 and 3 in the center, 4 against the far. 5. A 5th table sat in the corner, partially hidden by shadows. Its surface wasn't empty like the others. Something lay under a yellowed sheet, the fabric outlining a human form. I checked my watch. 3:27 a.m. I had 6 minutes before the safe time. I backed away from the door, but my eyes stayed fixed on that 5th table. The shape under the sheet moved, just slightly, like someone breathing in sleep. The smart thing would be to leave, wait out the 6 minutes. But I couldn't look away. The sheet had slipped partially off, revealing an arm. The skin was gray-blue, marked with old surgical scars. As I watched, the fingers twitched. Behind me, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Slow, wet steps, like someone walking in soaked shoes. I turned, but the hallway was empty. The footsteps continued, getting closer. I pressed myself against the wall. The morgue door's handle began to turn from the inside. The footsteps stopped directly behind me, though I could see nothing there. Cold breath touched my neck. The morgue door opened. A man in a moldy lab coat stood in the doorway, his face a ruin of surgical experiments. Holes drilled through his skull wept something dark. He looked right through me, as if I wasn't there, and spoke to whatever stood at my back. "Doctor will see him now." The invisible presence behind me moved past, and I felt its absence like sudden warmth. The man in the lab coat followed something I couldn't see into the morgue, closing the door behind him. 3:33 a.m. I forced myself to look through the window again. 4 tables, all empty. The 5th had vanished, along with the man in the lab coat. I finished the basement in record time, not caring about the quality of my work. By 4 a.m., I was back on the 1st floor, safe in the lobby's electric light and tourist brochures. Only room 419 scratching still echoed in my memory, promising worse to come. By 4:30 a.m., I'd convinced myself the worst was over. I was cleaning the lobby, polishing the brass fixtures around the registration desk, when I smelled it. Pipe tobacco, rich and sweet, drifting down from the grand staircase. The governor's suite was on the 3rd floor. I'd passed it earlier without incident, but now Protocol 4 was in play. I grabbed my cart, trying to ignore how the wheels echoed in the empty lobby. The smell grew stronger as I climbed. Not just tobacco, bourbon too, and something else. Leather and old paper, like my grandfather's study. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, the scent was overwhelming. The governor's suite occupied the entire west corner. Double doors, carved walnut, with a brass plaque reading Samuel W. Fordyce, 1902. Fordyce had been one of the original investors, a railroad man who'd helped build Eureka Springs into a resort town. I knocked 3 times. Just checking, Governor. Nothing changed. The smell remained, curling under the door like fingers. I waited, counting Mississippis in my head. At 30, I knocked again. Just checking, Governor. This time, I heard movement inside. Heavy footsteps crossing hardwood. The doorknob turned, and I stepped back, but the door remained closed. The footsteps retreated. The tobacco smell began to fade, replaced by something medicinal. That's when I noticed the elevator at the end of the hall. Not the guest elevator. This one was older, cage style, with a hand-operated gate. A brass sign read, "Service use only." But underneath, someone had scratched letters into the metal, MORGUE. The morgue elevator. Protocol 7 said not to investigate if it operated between 2 and 4 a.m. My watch showed 4:41. I was safe. But as I turned away, the elevator groaned to life. The cage descended past the 3rd floor, visible through the ornate ironwork of the shaft. I saw it stop at the 2nd floor. Through the gate, a figure in white loaded something onto a gurney. The nurse, Eleanor, but younger somehow. Her uniform crisp, her movements efficient. She wasn't alone. A man in a doctor's coat helped her with the gurney. Their patient was covered, but one arm had slipped free, hanging limp. The skin was marked with precise incisions, each one labeled with tiny paper tags. They descended to the basement. I knew I should leave, continue my rounds, but something made me press the call button. The elevator rose slowly, gears grinding. When it reached me, the gate was already open. Inside, the floor was stained dark. A clipboard hung from a hook, pages yellowed with age. I picked it up, squinting at the faded ink. Patient 47, Mrs. Catherine Jasper, Topeka, Kansas. Admitted October 15, 38. Memory cancer. Treatment, cranial drainage, 0.3. Watermelon seed injection, daily. Status, expired. October 27th, 1938. Disposal, standard. Page after page of similar entries. Names, hometowns, treatments that sounded more like torture. All ending with disposal, standard. The elevator lurched. I hadn't touched any controls, but we were descending. The buttons wouldn't respond. 2nd floor passed in a blur of darkness. 1st floor, then below. The basement level I'd cleaned earlier was B1. The elevator kept going. B2. B3. Floors that shouldn't exist, carved from living rock. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. My ears popped from the pressure. Finally, it stopped. The gate opened onto a corridor I'd never seen. Newer construction, maybe from the 60s. Concrete walls painted institutional green. Fluorescent fixtures hummed. No, that wasn't quite right. The sound was too organic, like insects trapped in the walls. I stayed in the elevator, hand on the gate. The corridor stretched impossibly far, doors evenly spaced on both sides. Each door had a small window. In the nearest, a face pressed against the glass. Pale, eyes wide, mouth moving in silent words. More faces appeared in other windows. Dozens of them. Patients who never left, even after disposal. They saw me and began pounding on their doors, still silent but desperate. The corridor filled with movement, hands and faces at every window. The elevator gate slammed shut on its own. We shot upward so fast my knees buckled. First floor, second, third, and kept going. Fourth, fifth, floors that the Crescent didn't have. Through the cage walls, I glimpsed impossible spaces. Operating theaters filled with obsolete equipment, wardrooms where shadows moved between empty beds, a grand ballroom where couples danced to music I couldn't hear. The elevator stopped at what the indicator claimed was the 8th floor. The gate opened onto the 3rd floor hallway, right where I'd started. My watch showed 4:42 a.m. 1 minute had passed. I stumbled out, and the elevator immediately descended again. The clipboard was gone. Had I imagined it? But my hands still smelled like old paper and formaldehyde. I made it back to the lobby, where Dwayne was doing his rounds. He took one look at me and frowned. "You okay?" "You're white as a sheet." "The morgue elevator. I wrote it." His face went rigid. "It's not running hours." It started at 4:41. Took me somewhere. Underground. There were people, Dwayne. Patients. Still alive. Still trapped. He grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me. Whatever you saw down there, you don't talk about it. Not to me. Not to Kellerman. Not to anyone. The elevator shows you things sometimes. True things, maybe, but things that aren't meant to be seen. You understand?" I nodded, though I didn't understand at all. "Good. Now, you've got about 40 minutes before you need to be off property. Finish what you can, but stay away from the 2nd floor. And Tom?" He squeezed my shoulders harder. "Don't ride that elevator again. Some of the janitors who quit. They rode it more than once. Said it started calling to them, showing up on whatever floor they were on. The 3rd guy, the one we lost, he rode it every night for a week before he vanished. He released me and returned to his office. I spent the remaining time in the lobby and gift shop, safe areas where nothing operated on its own schedule. But I could feel the hotel watching me now. In the reflection of every brass fixture, I saw movement that wasn't there. The tourist brochures on the rack seemed to rearrange themselves when I looked away, forming patterns I didn't want to interpret. At 5:25 a.m., I started packing up my supplies. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky had begun to lighten, gray instead of black. I'd survived my first night at the Crescent. The protocols had kept me safe mostly. But as I wheeled my cart toward the service entrance, I passed a mirror in the employee hallway and stopped cold. My reflection was wrong. Not dramatically. I still looked like myself. But behind my eyes was something I recognized from the faces in those basement windows. A hollow desperation. The look of someone who'd seen too much and couldn't forget. I touched the glass, and my reflection smiled, though I wasn't smiling. It mouthed words I couldn't hear, urgent and pleading. Then it turned and walked away, leaving me staring at empty glass. I ran the last 50 feet to my truck, threw my supplies in the back, and peeled out of the parking lot. The employee handbook said to be off property by 6 a.m. As I drove down the winding mountain road, I checked my mirrors obsessively. The hotel squatted above, windows dark except for one, a room on the 2nd floor where a figure in white watched me leave. My hands shook all the way home. I'd face this again tomorrow night, and the night after. The money was too good, my options too limited. But I understood now why the Crescent couldn't keep janitors. It wasn't the dead that drove people away. It was knowing that in this place, The boundary between living and dead was negotiable. That every night, you risked crossing a line you couldn't see until it was too late. I parked outside my efficiency apartment as the sun crested Magnetic Mountain. In 12 hours, I'd have to go back. Face the medicine cart, the morgue, the elevator that traveled to floors that didn't exist. Follow the protocols and hope they were enough. But first, I needed sleep. And maybe, if I was lucky, I wouldn't dream of those faces pressed against basement windows, still waiting for someone to find the right key. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces in the basement windows. By 10 p.m., I was back in the Crescent's parking lot, staring at the employee entrance like it might bite me. Kellerman waited inside, clipboard in hand. "Tom, heard you had an eventful first night." "Who told you?" "Security footage caught you coming out of the service elevator at 4:42 a.m. That elevator's been locked since 1987. He showed me a grainy printout. There I was, stumbling out of absolutely nothing, hands gripping invisible walls. The camera sees what's really there. You stepped out of thin air. My mouth went dry. I rode the morgue elevator. It was real. I'm sure it was to you." He made a note on his clipboard. "The Crescent shows people what it wants them to see. The protocols exist because we've learned, through trial and error, what keeps the hotel satisfied. Break them, and it gets creative. Then why keep the place open? Money, history, stubbornness?" He shrugged. "The feds tried to shut us down in '91 after the incident with the honeymoon couple. State Historical Society fought it. Now we're a landmark. Can't close, can't tear it down, so we manage." He handed me a new protocol card. Same 8 rules, but someone had added handwritten notes in the margins. Dwayne thought these might help. He's been here 12 years, longest of any night staff. The notes were brief, but specific. Medicine cart. She checks rooms in order. 201 to 219, then loops back. Room 419. Something inside wants out. Never succeeded. Yet. Morgue tables. The 5th one holds whoever broke protocol most recently. Governor. He's lonely. Acknowledgement suffices. Guests. They see what guests have always seen. You see what staff sees. 2nd floor. The soap matters. Modern chemicals wake them up. Elevator. It remembers everyone who rides it. 6 a.m. Dawn isn't protection. It's when the hotel counts its inventory. That last note made my skin crawl. Inventory? That's not to think about it. You made it through night 1. That's more than some. He left me to my work. The 4th floor was quiet again. I fell into a rhythm. Vacuum, dust, empty trash. Normal work for an abnormal place. Around midnight, I heard voices from the stairwell. A young couple, early 20s, stumbling and laughing. "Shh," the woman giggled. "We're not supposed to be up here." "Ghost tour ended an hour ago," the man replied. "But I bet we can find our own ghosts." They emerged onto the 4th floor, him recording with his phone, her clutching a bottle of wine. They spotted me and froze. "Oh, sorry, we were just..." She stopped, staring at something behind me. "Do you see that?" I turned. The hallway was empty. But in the phone screen, which the man had swung my way, I saw it too. A line of patients in hospital gowns, standing against the wall. Their heads were bandaged, dark stains seeping through gauze. They stood perfectly still, watching us with visible eyes. "The hotel appreciates your feedback," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "But they're right there." The woman pointed at empty air. "Can't you see them?" "The hotel appreciates your feedback." The man grabbed her arm. "Come on, Jess. Let's go." They fled toward the elevator. I looked at his phone, abandoned on the carpet in their haste. The screen still showed the patients. One of them, a woman with half her skull wrapped in bloody cloth, raised a finger to her lips. "Shh." I left the phone where it lay and continued working. By 1 a.m. I'd reached the 3rd floor. The tobacco smell was already strong near the governor's suite. Too early for the protocol, but concerning. I checked my watch obsessively as I cleaned, waiting for the correct moment. At 1:47 a.m., a door opened down the hall. An elderly woman in a bathrobe emerged, looking confused. "Excuse me," she called. "I'm trying to find my husband. He went for ice 20 minutes ago." I approached carefully. "Which room, ma'am?" 312. "But the ice machine is just around the corner. He should be back." She wrung her hands. "His heart isn't good. I'm worried he's had an episode." I helped her search the 3rd floor. No sign of her husband. We checked the ice machine alcove, the vending area, even knocked on the bathroom door. Nothing. "Maybe he went to a different floor?" I suggested. "Harold doesn't like elevators. He wouldn't." She paused, looking at the service elevator at the end of the hall. "The morgue elevator. Is that one working? He might have mistaken it for the stairs." "That elevator is off limits, ma'am. Staff only." But she was already walking toward it, calling out, "Harold? Harold, are you there?" The elevator gate stood open. That was wrong. I'd seen it close after my ride. Inside, a paper cup lay on its side, ice cubes melted into a puddle. "He was here," she said, reaching for the gate. I caught her arm. "Ma'am, please, let me call security. They'll search properly." She looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed too bright, too aware. "He's downstairs, isn't he?" With the others who got curious. Before I could respond, she pulled free and stepped into the elevator. The gate slammed shut. The car dropped away so fast, she didn't even have time to scream. The shaft was empty in seconds, cables still swaying. I called Dwayne immediately. He arrived within minutes, but the elevator had returned to the 3rd floor. Empty. No sign of the woman or her husband. "Room 312? Dwayne checked his tablet. "That room's been vacant for 3 days. No one named Harold checked in this week." "But I saw her. Talked to her." "I believe you, but she wasn't a guest." He studied the elevator. "It's hunting now, using bait. First time I've seen it create whole people, though. Usually it just makes sounds, crying, calls for help. This is new." "What do we do?" "We follow protocols and hope it gets bored." "Come on, let's check the 2nd floor together. Safety in numbers." The 2nd floor was worse than I remembered. The medicinal smell had intensified, mixed with something organic and wrong. Mold, maybe, or infection. We found my abandoned mop from the previous night, right where I'd dropped it. The bucket's water had turned thick and dark. "Never leave equipment on this floor," Dwayne said. "It absorbs things, changes them." He kicked the bucket over. The liquid didn't splash. It crawled across the floor like syrup, leaving trails that looked almost like letters. At 2 a.m. exactly, we heard the medicine cart. Dwayne and I took positions at different doors, him at 2:05, me at 2:11. The squeaking approached with its familiar rhythm. This time, I kept my eyes down, focusing on the worn carpet. Nurse Eleanor passed between us. Her shoes were visible in my peripheral vision. White, but stained with something rust-colored. She stopped at room 208, directly between Dwayne and me. I heard a key turn, a door open. Then a man's voice, weak and confused. "No, please. I'm not supposed to be here. I was just looking for my wife." Harold. Somehow, Harold was in that room. The door closed. The screaming started immediately. Not pain, but terror. Pure, animalistic fear. It went on for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Then silence. The cart resumed its path. Eleanor passed by, humming her tuneless song. In the cart's lower shelf, I glimpsed a paper cup, same as the one from the elevator. She completed her rounds and disappeared around the corner. Dwayne and I met at room 208. The door was locked, but through the keyhole, I could smell fresh earth and formaldehyde. "Don't," Dwayne warned as I reached for my keys. Some doors stay locked for good reasons. We finished the second floor in silence, using only the approved soap and water. Every surface felt contaminated, like the walls themselves were sick. By 3 a.m., we'd retreated to safer floors. "It's getting worse," I said as we cleaned the lobby. "Always does in October. Hotel's anniversary month. Baker bought it October 1937. First patient died October 1938. Whole place remembers." I thought about quitting right then, walking out, finding somewhere else to sleep, somewhere else to work. But I needed one more paycheck to get my truck fixed, maybe two to put down a deposit on a real apartment. "How do you stand it?" I asked. 12 years of this?" Dwayne smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. After a while, you stop noticing the weird stuff. That's when you know you've been here too long, when dead guests and moving elevators just become part of the routine. He was right. I was already adapting, calculating which protocols were most important, which floors to clean first for maximum safety. The horror was becoming procedure. That scared me more than any ghost. Night 3 started with a surprise. Kellerman met me at the entrance holding a cardboard box. "What's this?" "Equipment from the last janitor. Carlos Mendoza's family didn't want it." He set the box on the ground. "Might be useful." Inside, I found a flashlight with Carlos's initials carved into the handle, spare batteries, and a leather journal. The journal's pages were filled with tight handwriting, growing more erratic toward the end. "I'll leave you to it," Kellerman said, already backing away. I pocketed the journal and started my shift. The upper floors were becoming routine, a dangerous feeling in this place. I read Carlos's entries while working. October 2nd. They don't tell you about the smells. Each floor has its own. 4th smells like roses, but wrong, like funeral flowers left in water too long. October 5th. Saw a kid today, maybe 8 years old, standing in the hallway in pajamas. Told him to go back to his room. He said he couldn't find it. When I tried to help, he walked straight through the wall. October 9th. The morgue elevator knows my name now. I hear it calling from inside the shaft. "Carlos, come see what we found. Carlos, she's asking for you." The entries grew darker. By October 15th, his handwriting was barely legible. They're not ghosts. Ghosts would make sense. These are something else. Leftovers. Pieces of people Dr. Baker took apart and couldn't put back together. They want to be whole again. The elevator showed me how he did it. Drill into the skull, drain the cancer, replace it with... The sentence ended mid-word. I flipped through the remaining pages, all blank except the last one. The elevator says it can show me Maria, says she's downstairs with the others. I know it's lying. Maria died in Fayetteville 3 years ago. But what if it's not lying? What if Baker found a way to keep pieces of people? What if she's really down there waiting? I closed the journal, feeling sick. Carlos had been lured by the promise of his dead wife. The elevator knew exactly which buttons to push. By 1 a.m., I'd reached the second floor. The smell was different tonight. Not medicinal, but sweet, like overripe fruit. The walls seemed to pulse in my peripheral vision, but when I looked directly, they were still. I was mopping near room 214 when I heard footsteps. Not the medicine cart. Actual footsteps, quick and light. A child's gait. A boy appeared at the end of the hall, maybe 8 years old, just like Carlos had described. Flannel pajamas, bare feet, dark hair sticking up at odd angles. He stood there, watching me. "Sir, I can't find my room." I gripped the mop handle tighter. "The hotel appreciates your feedback." His face crumpled. "That's what everyone says. But I really can't find it. My mom is probably worried." "The hotel appreciates your feedback." He took a step closer. Under the hallway lights, I could see through him. Not transparently, but like looking at a reflection in disturbed water. "Please. I've been looking for so long." I wanted to help him. Every instinct said this was just a lost child. But I remembered Carlos's journal, the protocols, the consequences of breaking them. "The hotel appreciates your feedback." The boy's expression changed. The innocence drained away, replaced by something ancient and calculating. "You're not very nice," he said, voice dropping an octave. "The others were nicer. They tried to help." He walked toward the wall and disappeared into it, leaving only the lingering scent of mothballs and copper. At 2 a.m., the medicine cart began its rounds. I took position at room 211, but something was different. The squeaking came from both ends of the hallway. 2 carts, closing in from opposite directions. I pressed against the door trying to figure out which was real. Both sounded identical. Same rhythm, same clinking glass. They drew closer, and I realized with growing panic that they'd reach me at the same time. Protocol said to stand by a door. It didn't say what to do when there were 2 of them. The carts stopped on either side of me. I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel them watching. 2 nurses or 2 versions of the same nurse. The snow was overwhelming. Carbolic acid from the left, sweet rot from the right. "This one's out of place," said the voice on my left. "No room assignment," agreed the voice on my right. "Should we process him?" "Check his temperature first." A cold hand touched my forehead, then another from the opposite side. Both ice cold, both somehow wet. I stood perfectly still, barely breathing. 98.6, said the left voice. "Too warm for downstairs," said the right. "But cooling. Always cooling." They moved on in unison, carts squeaking away in opposite directions. When I finally opened my eyes, there were wet handprints on my shirt. Both glowed faintly in the dark, like phosphorescent paint. I abandoned the second floor and headed for the basement. Better to face the morgue tables than whatever game Eleanor was playing tonight. The basement was colder than usual. My breath came out in clouds. The morgue door stood open, which violated every instinct I had. I counted from the doorway. 4 tables. Normal configuration, but the room wasn't empty. A man in a white coat bent over table 3, working on something I couldn't see. His movements were precise, practiced. Occasionally, he'd reach for instruments on a side tray, scalpels, forceps, things I couldn't identify. "Don't just stand there," he said without looking up. "If you're here to observe, come observe." I stayed in the doorway. "I'm just cleaning." "Everyone says that." He turned slightly, and I saw his profile. Dr. Norman Baker himself, looking exactly like the photographs in the hotel museum. They all pretend they're not curious, but you wrote the elevator, didn't you? It only shows itself to the curious ones. I'm following protocols. He laughed, a sound like grinding glass. Protocols. Tellerman's little rules to keep you safe. Did he tell you who wrote them? I did. Back in '38, after we lost the first 3 nurses, figured out what the building wanted, what kept it calm. But protocols only work if you understand their purpose. He finally faced me fully. Half his face was normal, the other half stripped to muscle and bone, as if he'd been practicing on himself. Room 419 wants to be opened because that's where I kept the failures, the ones who didn't survive the treatments. Protocol says keep it closed after 2 a.m. because that's when they're strongest. But what happens when they finally get out? What happens when 43 failed experiments remember what was done to them? I backed away, but he continued talking. The medicine cart makes rounds because Eleanor can't stop. I told her to check the patients every 2 hours, and she took it literally. Even death didn't stop her. Stand by a door so she thinks you belong? Sure, but she's learning. Tonight she brought a friend. The morgue door slammed shut between us. Through the window, I watched Baker return to his work. On the table lay Carlos Mendoza, chest open, organs arranged neatly beside him. Carlos's eyes were open, tracking Baker's movements. I ran. Screw protocols, screw the job, screw everything. I sprinted for the service elevator, jabbing the button frantically. Behind me, the morgue door opened again. Running only makes it interested, Baker called out. The building likes runners, gives it something to chase. The elevator arrived and I dove inside, but instead of the lobby button, my finger hit B3, a button that hadn't been there before. The elevator plunged downward. The doors opened on a hospital ward that couldn't exist. Modern equipment mixed with antique. Heart monitors next to iron lungs. IV drips beside bottles of Baker's snake oil cures. The beds were occupied, every single one. Patients in various states of decay lay hooked to machines. Some were clearly from Baker's era. Others looked recent. Too recent. I recognized the security guard from Kellerman's story, the one before Carlos. A woman in a business suit who might have been the other missing janitor. At the far end of the ward, a bed waited. The nameplate already read, Tom Whitfield. The elevator doors started closing. I lunged for them, squeezing through just as they shut. The elevator rose, but slowly, like moving through molasses. At each floor, something pounded on the doors, trying to get in. When I finally reached the lobby, Dwayne was waiting. "You look like hell," he said. Then saw my shirt. The glowing handprints had spread, creating a pattern across my chest. Jesus. Both of them touched you? There were 2 carts, 2 nurses. His face went pale. That's new. That's very not good. Come on. He led me to the security office and pulled out a first aid kit. But instead of bandages, he removed a mason jar filled with clear liquid. Drink this? What is it? Officially? Water. Unofficially? Water that's been blessed by Father Martinez at St. Elizabeth's, Rabbi Cohen from the temple, and that Wiccan lady who runs the crystal shop. Figured we'd cover all bases. I drank. It tasted like normal water, but felt different going down. Cleaner somehow. The glowing handprints began to fade. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. If Eleanor's duplicating, if the elevator's adding floors, if Baker's up and working. He trailed off. The hotel's building up to something. Halloween, maybe, or the anniversary of Baker's arrest. Either way, you need to be careful. Maybe take a few sick days. Can't afford to. Can't afford to end up in that ward downstairs either. He was right, but rent was due in a week, and my checking account was running on fumes. I needed this job, nightmare factory or not. "I'll be careful," I promised. Famous last words. He handed me the rest of the holy water cocktail. "Keep this. And Tom, that journal of Carlos's, might want to stop reading it. Sometimes knowing too much is worse than knowing too little." I finished my shift sticking to the safest areas: lobby, gift shop, first floor restrooms. At 5:30, I practically ran to my truck. The hotel squatted behind me, windows glowing in the pre-dawn light. In the second floor window, 2 figures in white watched me leave. 2 nurses. Tomorrow, there might be 3. I drove home trying not to think about the bed with my nameplate, waiting in a basement that shouldn't exist. Trying not to wonder if free will was just another protocol, and I was following it perfectly. Night 4. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine running, staring at the employee entrance. The smart thing would be to drive away, find a different job, sleep in the truck again if I had to. But Bethany had called that afternoon. First time in 3 months. "Tom, I heard you're working again. That's good." "Yeah, night shift at the Crescent." Silence. Then, "Be careful. That place has history." "I know. No, I mean..." She paused. "My grandmother worked there, back when Baker ran it. She was a maid, cleaned the patient rooms. Never talked about it much, but before she died, she told me things. Said the building keeps score. Said some debts don't get paid in money. Beth, just be careful, Tom. Please." She'd hung up before I could respond. Now, sitting in the parking lot, her words echoed. The building keeps score. I grabbed Carlos's journal from the glove compartment, flipping to a page I'd overlooked. October 11th. Kellerman knows more than he lets on. Found old employee records in his office while delivering supplies. 17 janitors in 5 years. Only 3 officially quit. The rest are listed as terminated, no forwarding address. But their final paychecks were never cashed. 17 janitors. I was number 18. The employee door opened. Kellerman stood there checking his watch. "You're late." "Traffic," I lied. "No excuses. The hotel runs on schedule." He studied my face. "You look tired. Everything all right?" "Peachy." He didn't buy it, but didn't push. Tonight's going to be challenging. October 29th. Anniversary of the first patient death under Baker's care. Margaret O'Brien, age 7. Bone cancer. Baker tried an experimental treatment involving radium water and cranial drainage. She died on the operating table. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she likes to play games on her anniversary. Hide and seek, mostly. If you hear a child giggling, don't look for her. If you find a toy, doll, ball, whatever, leave it where it is. And whatever you do, don't play along." He handed me my supplies and left. I noticed he'd parked his car facing out, keys already in his hand. The 4th floor felt different immediately. The roses Carlos had mentioned were stronger, mixed with something chemical. Formaldehyde and flowers, funeral home perfume. Every shadow seemed to move independently of its source. Near room 403, I found the first toy. A cloth doll, old-fashioned, with yarn hair and button eyes. It sat propped against the wall, arms outstretched like it wanted to be picked up. I mopped around it. "That's cheating," said a small voice. I kept working, eyes on the floor. You're supposed to pick up Emily. She's lonely." The doll was closer now, though I hadn't seen it move. Its button eyes caught the light, seeming to track my movements. "Nobody wants to play anymore," the voice continued, moving around me in a slow circle. The other man played. He picked up Emily and threw her back. That was fun. But then he went downstairs and didn't come back up. Carlos. She was talking about Carlos. I finished mopping that section and moved on. Behind me, I heard the soft thump of the doll falling over. Then footsteps, bare feet on carpet, following at a distance. The third floor was worse. Tobacco smoke so thick it made my eyes water, but the governor's suite was silent. No protocol needed. The smoke was everywhere, inescapable. And underneath it, another smell. Radium. I recognized it from the cancer ward where my mother had died. That metallic tang that meant poison dressed up as medicine. Every door on the third floor stood slightly open, not enough to see inside, just enough to suggest invitation. From each room came different sounds, typewriters clacking, ice clinking in glasses, jazz music from the 1920s, the Crescent showing off its memories. In the supply closet, I found something new. A medical kit from the 1930s, leather bag with brass clasps. Inside were vials of Baker's Cure, labels promising miracle treatment for cancer, tuberculosis, syphilis. All of it was water mixed with whatever chemicals he could find. The desperate had paid thousands for this false hope. One vial was different. Modern plastic, not glass. The label read, T. Whitfield, dose 1 of 7. My hand shook as I set it back. The building was preparing something specifically for me. 7 doses of what? Why 7? The little girl's voice drifted from the hallway. He found his medicine. Does that mean he'll play now? I slammed the closet and headed for the second floor. Better to face the nurses than whatever game was starting here. But the second floor had transformed. The hallway stretched longer than physically possible, doors multiplying into the distance. The carpet pattern swirled, making my eyes water if I looked too long. And the smell, no longer medicinal but organic. Blood and birth, death and decay. The full cycle of human existence soaked into the walls. Room 218 stood open. Inside, I glimpsed an operating theater that couldn't fit in a hotel room. Doctors in vintage surgical gear worked on multiple patients simultaneously. The walls were glass, and behind them, an audience watched. Men in suits taking notes, calculating profit from suffering. I pulled the door shut. It immediately swung open again. "Closing time was hours ago," said a familiar voice. Eleanor stood beside me, though I hadn't heard the cart. She wore a different uniform, older, military style from World War I. "Dr. Baker needs his theater." "I'm just cleaning," I said, sticking to the protocol. "No." She smiled, and her teeth were too sharp, too many. "You're investigating, asking questions, reading journals. The curious ones always think they can solve it like a puzzle. But you're not detective material, Tom. You're patient material." She reached for me. I stumbled backward, tripping over my mop bucket. The water, blessed by Dwayne's multi-faith coalition, splashed across her uniform. She shrieked, a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe, and vanished, but her voice lingered. 7 doses make the process painless. Without them, you'll feel everything. The medicine cart appeared at the far end of the hall, moving without a pusher. Then another cart from a side hallway. Then another. Soon, 5 carts converged on my position, all empty, all eager. I ran for the stairwell, protocols forgotten. On the landing between floors, that boy in pajamas waited. "Found you," he said. "Now you're it." The stairwell door slammed shut behind me. The lights went out. In the darkness, small hands grabbed my shirt, my arms, my legs. Not one child, dozens. All of Baker's young victims, all playing the same eternal game. "Count to 10, they chanted. "Count to 10 and come find us." I thrashed free and stumbled down the stairs, guided only by the exit sign's red glow. But the stairs went down too far, past the first floor, past the basement, into levels that shouldn't exist. The morgue elevator was waiting at sublevel 5. Doors open, interior lit by flickering bulbs. I had two choices: stay in the stairwell with the children or risk the elevator again. I chose the elevator. Inside, the buttons had changed. Instead of floors, they showed dates: October 29th, 1937, November 15th, 1938, March 3rd, 1939, December 21st, 1939, May 16th, 1940, September 30th, 2024, October 29th, 2024. The last date was today. My finger moved toward it without conscious thought. The elevator lurched upward, or was it backward? Direction lost meaning. The doors opened on the second floor, but not the one I knew. This was Baker's hospital in full operation. Nurses rushed past with terrified patients. The screaming came from everywhere. Rooms, closets, the walls themselves. Eleanor appeared, young and horrified, trying to comfort a dying woman. "I didn't know," she whispered to the patient. "I thought we were helping. I'm so sorry." The scene shifted. Now Eleanor was older, harder. She prepared a syringe with steady hands, while a patient begged for mercy. "Doctor's orders," she said. "It's for your own good." Another shift. Eleanor dead on the floor, empty pill bottle in her hand. Self-administered justice for sins that couldn't be absolved. "But I couldn't stop," present Eleanor said beside me. "Death didn't end my shift. Every night I make my rounds. Every night I see their faces. The building won't let me rest until the books are balanced. What does it want? 18 janitors. One for each month Baker operated. You're the last. After you, maybe it finally sleeps." The elevator doors closed. When they opened, I was in the lobby. Dwayne stood there, holy water cocktail in hand. "Drink," he ordered. I gulped it down. "The building wants 18 janitors. I'm number 18. "I know." He looked exhausted. "Kellerman knows, too. Hell, the whole town knows. Why do you think the job was available? Why do you think I suggested you?" The betrayal hit like cold water. "You set me up. I saved you from drinking yourself to death in that truck. This," he gestured at the hotel, "this is cleaner. One night, maybe two, and it's over. You disappear neat and clean. No messy suicide for Bethany to blame herself for. No body for your students to remember." "You bastard." "I'm practical. The hotel needs its 18. Better someone who's already given up than some kid with a future." He checked his watch. "You've got 2 hours. Finish your shift or don't. But at 6 a.m., the building counts inventory. Make sure you're either gone or ready to be counted." He walked away, leaving me alone in the lobby. Around me, the Crescent breathed. Walls expanding and contracting, like a massive organism digesting its latest meal. 2 hours to decide. Run and live with the knowledge that someone else would take my place, or stay and become part of the hotel's collection, another ghost making rounds for eternity. Through the windows, I saw movement on every floor. Patients, nurses, doctors, janitors, all going through their routines, all trapped in their final moments. Somewhere above, a little girl giggled. "Found you," she said. "You're it forever." 2 hours. I had 2 hours to choose between my death and someone else's. I returned to the second floor. If I was going to die here, I wanted to understand why. The medical bag in the supply closet still held my vial. T. Whitfield, dose 1 of 7. I pocketed it and searched deeper. Behind boxes of old soap, I found files. Employee records going back decades. The 17 previous janitors were all there. Each file ended the same way. Termination type: absorbed. Miguel Ramirez, single father of 2. Absorbed, October 31st, 2019. Jennifer Park, nursing student working nights. Absorbed, October 31st, 2020. Robert Hayes, veteran with PTSD. Absorbed, October 31st, 2021. Always October 31st. Always people who wouldn't be missed immediately. Always people who were already struggling. Kellerman's signature appeared on every termination form. A new file lay at the bottom, already filled out. Tom Whitfield. Termination type: pending. Date: October 31st, 2024. But there was more. Older records from Baker's time. Patient files, but these were different. 18 specific cases, all children, all dead within the hotel's first 18 months as a hospital. Margaret O'Brien was first. The others followed. Timothy Baker, no relation. Susan Couch, James Hartley, and 14 more. Each file contained Baker's notes on revolutionary treatments. Drill holes to release pressure, inject radium to burn out disease, replace blood with his miracle tonic. The children had been experiments, testing grounds for procedures he'd later use on wealthy adults. "You found them," Eleanor said behind me. She looked older now, tired. "My special patients. I tried to ease their passing, but Baker always intervened. Said suffering was part of the cure. Why children? They complained less. Parents desperate enough to bring them here didn't ask questions. And when they died..." She shrugged. Cancer was always fatal anyway. No one suspected murder. The hotel wants 18 janitors for 18 children. Balance. The building believes in balance. She moved closer, and I smelled lavender beneath the carbolic acid. "But you're thinking too small. It doesn't want you dead. It wants you absorbed. Part of the structure, part of the story. Another ghost to maintain the narrative. What's the difference? The dead can rest. The absorbed keep working." I thought of Carlos searching eternally for his wife, of the security guard still making rounds, of Eleanor herself, forever pushing her cart. "There's another way," she whispered. "Break the cycle. But it requires understanding what the building truly is." She led me to room 218, the room I had seen transformed into an operating theater. Now it looked normal. Twin beds, dated furniture, painting of the Christ of the Ozarks on the wall. "Touch the painting," she said. I did. My hand passed through it, finding a hidden space behind. Inside was another journal, this one in Baker's handwriting. The foundation stones came from the old Osage burial ground. The limestone speaks if you listen. It remembers every death, every drop of blood. I thought I could harness that power for healing. Instead, I fed it. Every patient who died here, every child who screamed their last. The building absorbed them all. Now it's hungry. Always hungry. Baker didn't create the problem, Eleanor explained. He just made it worse. The land was already marked. The Osage knew to avoid it. But white settlers saw prime real estate. So how do I break the cycle? You don't. You redirect it. She pulled out a syringe filled with something dark. This is what remains of Baker's original serum. Not the fake tonic he sold, but the real mixture he discovered in his final days. The one that let him speak to the building directly. You want me to inject that? I want you to choose. Take the serum, speak to the building, negotiate a new deal. Or become number 18 and hope the hunger stops with you. I took the syringe. The liquid inside moved on its own, crawling up and down the chamber like it was alive. What kind of deal? That's between you and the stones. But remember, the building thinks in centuries, not years. Whatever you offer, make sure it's sustainable. She faded, leaving me alone with the syringe and my decision. I sat on one of the beds, rolling the vial between my fingers. The smart play was to run. Get in my truck, drive until the gas ran out. Figure out the rest later. Let Kellerman find another desperate soul. But I thought about Jennifer Park, the nursing student. She'd probably taken this job to pay for school, to build a better life. Miguel Ramirez's kids had lost their father to this place. 17 people who just needed work, needed hope, and found neither. Then I thought about Bethany's call. Even she knew this place was dangerous. The whole town knew. And they let it continue, feeding the hotel one janitor at a time, pretending it was just another tourist attraction. I uncapped the syringe. The needle went in easy. The serum burned like ice, spreading from my arm through my chest, into my head. The room spun, walls breathing, floor rippling like water. Then I was somewhere else. Not a room, but a space between rooms. The bones of the building, where limestone met earth, met memory. The foundation stones pulsed with stored death. Decades of accumulated suffering crystallized into architectural fact. The building spoke without words, communicating in pure sensation. Hunger, yes, but also purpose. It existed to contain something deeper, older. The Osage had built nothing here because they understood. This ground was a natural weak point, where the boundary between life and death wore thin. The hotel was both seal and siphon, drawing in death to prevent it from spilling out. Baker had tried to exploit that power. Instead, he'd disrupted the balance. Now the hotel needed constant feeding to maintain itself. 18. It pressed into my mind. The equation must balance. What if I offer something else? I said to the stones. Not 18 people, but one person 18 times. The building considered. I felt its attention like weight, crushing and ancient. I'll stay, I continued, not absorbed, but employed. Permanent night janitor. I'll maintain the building, the protocols, the balance. In exchange, no more taking janitors. The position becomes truly permanent. One life cannot equal 18. Then I'll give you 18 years. I'll work every night for 18 years, then you can have me. But during those years, no one else gets absorbed. The cycle stops. Silence. The stones calculated, weighed options measured in geological time. Acceptable. But conditions apply. The terms flooded my mind. I would age normally, but couldn't leave the property between sunset and dawn. I'd maintain all protocols, adding new ones as needed. I'd train my eventual replacement in year 17, and if I broke the agreement, all 18 would be collected immediately, starting with me and working backward through every person I'd ever cared about. Deal. The world snapped back into focus. I was on the floor of room 218, syringe empty beside me. My phone showed 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes until the deadline. I stood, feeling different. not possessed or changed, just connected. I could sense the building's needs like my own hunger. The second floor needed cleaning properly with the right soap. The morgue tables needed arranging. The elevator needed oiling. Kellerman waited in the lobby, checking his watch. "Tom? You look... I made a deal." I handed him the empty syringe. "Permanent position. Check your files." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. His face went pale. "This is dated 1937. From Norman Baker himself, establishing a permanent night janitor position with very specific terms. 18 years of service. No more absorbed janitors. I maintain the balance. The board will never..." He stopped, scrolling more. "They already approved it. Retroactively. How is that possible? The building gets what the building wants." I gathered my supplies. "I'll need access to the archives. All of Baker's notes, the original blueprints, the Osage territorial maps. If I'm doing this for 18 years, I'm doing it right." Kellerman nodded slowly. "I'll have them ready tonight. Tom, what you've done is my choice. No one else needs to die here." I walked out as the sun crested the mountains. The hotel settled behind me, satisfied for now. In my truck, I found a manila envelope that hadn't been there before. Inside, a formal employment contract dated today and signed by witnesses who'd been dead for decades. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Welcome to the permanent staff. Evie." I drove home to my efficiency apartment, thinking about the 18 years ahead. By the end, I'd be 57. Not old, but old enough. Old enough to have paid my debt to the 17 who came before, to the 18 children who died for Baker's ambition. My phone rang. Bethany. "Tom?" "I had the strangest dream. You were at the hotel, but you were also part of it? Like the walls were listening to you." "Just a dream," I said. "But I got promoted. Permanent position. Good benefits." "That's good?" She sounded uncertain. "Tom, are you okay?" I thought about it. For the first time in months, I had purpose. Dark purpose, maybe, but purpose nonetheless. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." Tonight I'd return to the Crescent. I'd clean the floors and count the morgue tables. I'd stand by doors when the cart passed and acknowledge the governor's loneliness. I'd follow the protocols, and I had new ones as needed. And for 18 years, no one else would disappear into the hungry stones of the hotel. It wasn't redemption, but it was balance. And sometimes, that's enough. The new hire arrived on a Tuesday in February, snow dusting the Ozark Hills. Rachel Townsend, fresh out of college, eager for any job in this economy. I met her at the employee entrance, same spot where I'd started my own journey into the Crescent's embrace. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm Rachel. Thank you for this opportunity." "Just Tom." I handed her the protocol card, laminated, updated, with my own notes in the margins. "And don't thank me yet." 4 months into my 18-year sentence, I'd established new rhythms. The building and I communicated in maintenance requests and atmospheric changes. When a pipe burst on the 3rd floor, I knew a new ghost had arrived. When the morgue tables rearranged themselves, I understood someone had been asking too many questions about the hotel's history. "These rules seem specific," Rachel said, scanning the list. "They keep you safe. Follow them exactly, no matter how strange they seem." She nodded, that same skeptical acceptance I'd shown Kellerman. Soon enough, she'd understand. I walked her through the routine. 4th floor first. Always start where it's safest. Show competence before facing the real challenges. She handled the mundane tasks well, asking smart questions about cleaning products and schedules. Why no bleach on the second floor? The residents have preferences, I said. You'll learn to read them. At 1:30 a.m., I brought her to the second floor. The smell hit her immediately. Medicine and memories, suffering soaked into wood. This is where Dr. Baker treated patients, I explained. Some never left. At 2 a.m., Nurse Eleanor makes rounds. When you hear her cart, stand by a door. Don't run, don't hide. Just stand like you belong. You talk about her like she's real. Real is a complicated word here. Eleanor had become almost friendly since my deal with the building. Sometimes she'd nod as she passed, acknowledging our shared burden. Other nights, she'd leave medical supplies in the closet, bandages that never aged, antiseptic that cleaned more than physical wounds. What about him? Rachel pointed down the hall where the boy in pajamas sat cross-legged, playing with toy soldiers. Protocol 5. When guests mention seeing anyone unusual, you respond with, "The hotel appreciates your feedback," she finished. "But he's right there." Yes, and you'll see him every shift. Also a girl named Margaret who likes hide and seek, and at least a dozen others. Don't engage. They're not here for you. The boy looked up at us and waved. I'd learned his name, Timothy Baker, no relation to the doctor. Died of bone cancer in January 1938, age 7. He spent eternity playing with the same toy soldiers, recreating battles from a war he'd never grow old enough to understand. Rachel followed me in silence after that, absorbing the reality of her workplace. I showed her the basement morgue, always 4 tables now, never 5. The governor's suite, empty since I'd arranged for weekly bourbon deliveries, and room 419. Never open this door after 2 a.m., I said. What's inside wants out badly. So far, it hasn't succeeded. What happens if it does? I add a new protocol. She stuck close as 2 a.m. approached. We positioned ourselves by different doors. Her at 2:07, me at 2:15. The cart's squeaking began right on schedule. Eleanor passed between us, humming her tuneless song. She paused at Rachel, studying the new employee. I held my breath. Then Eleanor continued on, apparently satisfied. When the cart faded, Rachel was shaking. That was your first night. It gets easier. Does it? I thought about my answer. 4 months in, I slept like the dead during daylight. My dreams were hotel corridors, endless and patient. Bethany had stopped calling after I'd explained my new schedule. My old life was fading, replaced by this peculiar purpose. Different, I said finally. It gets different. We finished the shift without major incident. As dawn approached, I walked Rachel to her car. Same time tomorrow? She asked. Every night. That's the deal. Your deal. She studied me with eyes too knowing for someone so young. The hotel needed 18 janitors. You're number 18, aren't you? But you're still here. Smart girl. I made arrangements. How long? Long enough. She drove away, but I knew she'd return. The pay was too good, the economy too harsh. And maybe, like me, she'd find strange comfort in the work. Purpose in maintaining the balance between our world and whatever lay beneath the limestone. I stood in the parking lot, watching the sun rise over the Ozarks. Behind me, the Crescent settled into daytime dormancy. The guests would come with their cameras and ghost tours, seeking thrills. They'd never know that the real horror wasn't in seeing ghosts. It was in becoming one, slowly, shift by shift, until you couldn't imagine existing anywhere else. 17 years and 8 months remaining. I walked to my truck, already planning tonight's maintenance. The elevator needed oil. The second-floor carpet had a stain that might be blood or might be wine. Either way, it needed attention. And Margaret had hidden dolls in the supply closets again, a game that would end badly if the wrong person played along. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though I recognized the format. "Thank you for accepting the permanent position. Your service honors those who came before. Management." Management. As if this were a normal job with normal obligations. But then again, maybe it was. Every job demanded sacrifice. Mine just happened to be measured in years instead of hours, in souls instead of spreadsheets. I drove home to sleep, to dream of endless hallways and medicine carts, of children who played eternal games in elevators that traveled through time instead of space. Tonight, I'd return. Rachel would have questions. The building would have needs. The protocols would hold the line between order and chaos. And somewhere in room 218, that employment contract waited, signed in blood and limestone dust, binding me to 18 years of nights. Time enough to save 17 others. Time enough to balance the books. Time enough to earn whatever waited at the end. Rest, absorption, or something else entirely. The Crescent Hotel kept its secrets. Soon enough, I'd be one of them.